Step away from the glass." Victoria Ashford's voice carried the kind of authority reserved for people who believe they own the air you breathe. Her hand, manicured, Chanel Rouge Noir polish, $28 per bottle, hovered protectively over the display case as if Jamal Washington's mere proximity might contaminate it. He hadn't even touched it. His fingers were still 6 inches away. Sterling and Hartwell. Fine jewelers gleamed under crystal chandeliers worth more than most cars. The Cartier Panthère diamond necklace sat behind glass like a caged star, $10,000 of compressed carbon and craftsmanship. Jamal had walked in wanting to buy it. He'd left his precinct during lunch, cash already withdrawn from the bank that morning, ready to celebrate 15 years of marriage to the woman who'd stood by him through academy training, bullet wounds, and departmental racism. But Victoria saw something else when she looked at him. Something that made her reach for the hand sanitizer before he'd said a word. "I'd like to see that necklace," Jamal said quietly. Gray hoodie, clean jeans, Nike sneakers that cost more than her blouse, though she'd never know that. "The Cartier piece, for my wife." Victoria's smile was the kind white women perfect in expensive stores, polite venom. "Sir, I'm not sure you understand what you're looking at. This is a $10,000 item. Perhaps I could show you something more realistic?" Bethany, the younger saleswoman near the Tiffany display, went still. She'd heard this tone before, knew exactly where it was going. "I understand the price," Jamal replied, his voice steady despite the heat creeping up his neck. "That's why I'd like to examine it before purchasing. Standard procedure, right?" Victoria pulled a surgical mask from beneath the counter, one of those pandemic leftovers that had found new purpose. She slipped it over her nose and mouth before stepping closer to the case, as if his breath carried contagion. "There's a very nice jewelry store 3 blocks down on Lexington," she said, her words muffled by fabric. "More accessible price points. Your girlfriend would probably appreciate something from there just as much. Have you ever had someone decide your worth before you opened your wallet? Comment if you know that feeling." The assumption hit like a slap. Not wife, girlfriend, not afford, can't afford, not welcome here, never welcome here. Jamal's jaw tightened. 17 years as an NYPD detective had taught him to read people, and Victoria was an open book written in prejudice. But he'd also learned to choose his battles. Some fights you win by walking away and coming back with better ammunition. "I see," he said finally. His eyes tracked the security cameras in the corners, 4 of them, decent coverage, 1 blind spot near the door. Professional habit. "Thank you for your honesty." Victoria relaxed visibly, interpreting his calm as defeat. She watched him turn toward the exit, already dismissing him from her mind. The moment the door chimed behind him, she pulled out a microfiber cloth and wiped down the glass where his shadow had fallen. "Jesus, Vic," Bethany whispered. "That was necessary," Victoria interrupted, buffing the glass to a spotless shine. "You maintain standards, or this place becomes a circus." She had no idea the circus was about to come for her. What Victoria didn't know, couldn't know, was that the man she'd just humiliated was the only person who'd be able to save her job in the next 30 minutes. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens when he comes back. 15 minutes after Jamal left, the door chimed again. This time, Victoria's face transformed into a brilliant smile. The man who entered looked like he'd stepped out of a luxury car commercial. Armani suit, navy blue, easily $3,500. Rolex Submariner on his wrist, $12,000, gleaming under the lights. Oxfords by Salvatore Ferragamo, $800, polished to a mirror shine. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and his cologne, Tom Ford Tobacco Vanille, $250 per bottle, announced his arrival before he spoke. "Good afternoon," Victoria practically sang, rushing from behind the counter. Welcome to Sterling and Hartwell. How may I assist you today? The man, who'd introduced himself as Preston Blackwood, smiled warmly. Well, aren't you a breath of fresh air? I'm looking for something special. An anniversary gift for my wife. 25 years. How wonderful. Congratulations. Victoria practically floated to the Cartier display. No hesitation, no questions about whether he could afford it. His suit answered every question she needed answered. This Panthère necklace just came in. 10,000, absolutely exquisite. Preston leaned in, examining it with the appreciation of a man who knew quality, or a man who'd studied how men who knew quality behaved. Stunning. My wife would love this. Victoria unlocked the case, smooth, practiced, eager. She lifted the necklace onto black velvet, holding it up so light danced through the diamonds. I'll take it, Preston declared. Excellent choice, sir. Actually, Preston glanced at his Rolex. Damn. Conference call with Tokyo in 10 minutes. Would you mind terribly if I ran to my car for my wallet? I prefer cash for jewelry. Tradition. A flicker of hesitation crossed Victoria's face. But Preston's suit probably cost more than her monthly rent. His watch could have bought a decent used car. Everything about him screamed trustworthy. Of course, sir. I'll prepare the paperwork. You're wonderful. 2 minutes, I promise. He flashed another winning smile and headed for the door. Victoria placed the necklace on the velvet pad, already calculating her $800 commission. Bethany shot her a look, but Victoria waved her off. 2 minutes passed. 5, 10. Most people don't see cons coming. They look exactly like what you trust. Subscribe so you're not caught off guard. Victoria's smile cracked, then shattered. She ran to the window, pressing her face against the glass. Fifth Avenue bustled with afternoon traffic. Taxis, delivery trucks, rushing pedestrians. No Preston Blackwood, no Navy Armani suit, no man coming back with cash. The necklace was gone. No. The word came out strangled. She spun back to the counter, checking the pad, the floor, behind displays. No, 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 Bethany, where did he put it? I thought you had it. Bethany's voice climbed into panic. You said you'd hold it. He was going to his car. He was a gentleman. Victoria's voice broke. The truth crashed over her in waves of ice water. She'd been played, conned, manipulated by a professional who'd known exactly which buttons to push. And she'd given him a $10,000 necklace because he wore the right costume. The same instinct that made her trust Preston without question had made her reject Jamal without thought. Appearance over character, clothes over credentials, bias over basic sense. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone, but she didn't need to call. The door chimed. Harrington Pemberton walked in. Third-generation jeweler, old money, older prejudices. At 72, he carried a mahogany walking stick he didn't need and opinions he'd never examined. Mr. Pemberton? Victoria rushed toward him, tears already streaming. Sir, something terrible. A man took the Cartier necklace. He said he was getting his wallet, but he never came back. We need to call the police immediately. Pemberton's expression didn't change. He walked slowly to the empty velvet pad, examining it with the same care he'd examine a suspicious stone. You let someone walk out with $10,000 of my merchandise. He was so professional, sir. Expensive suit, Rolex. He talked about his wife. Everything about him said trustworthy. He's on the security footage. We can identify him, alert the police. Show me. Bethany pulled up the footage on the tablet. They watched Preston Blackwood charm his way in, examine the necklace, leave with promises of returning. The timestamp read 2:47 p.m. It was now 3:12 p.m. There! Victoria jabbed at the screen desperately. You can see him, his face, his clothes. The cameras don't cover the street, Pemberton said quietly. City ordinance. Once he left the building, he vanished. Victoria felt the ground dissolve beneath her. But we can give police his description. They can— Victoria. Pemberton turned to face her fully. His eyes were surgical instruments. How many times have I told you never to remove high-value items from locked cases without secured payment? He was coming right back. How many times? Her voice cracked. Every training session. What would you have done in her shoes? Comment below. We want to hear it. Yet you violated that rule for a complete stranger who walked in off the street and spun a pleasant story. Pemberton's gaze cut through her excuses. I find that very interesting. Victoria's blood went cold. What are you saying? I'm saying this is remarkably convenient. A supposed thief convinces my most experienced saleswoman to hand over an expensive necklace, leaves during the one angle our cameras can't follow, and now the merchandise is gone with no way to recover it. You think I stole it? The words came out as a shriek of disbelief. This is my career. My life. $10,000 is powerful motivation, especially for someone carrying $43,000 in credit card debt. Pemberton's words were ice picks. That's motive, Victoria. I would never— Bethany, Pemberton cut her off. Did you witness Victoria replacing the necklace in the locked case after this gentleman left? Bethany looked like she wanted to disappear. No, sir. I was at the pearl display. So we have only Victoria's word that she placed it on the display at all. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police, not to report a mysterious gentleman thief, to report employee theft, with you as the primary suspect. Victoria's world imploded. 8 years of perfect service, 8 years of commission checks and customer praise. All of it burning because a con artist in an expensive suit had known exactly how to exploit her biases. The bitter irony wasn't lost on her. 45 minutes ago, she'd judged Jamal Washington by his hoodie and decided he couldn't afford jewelry. Now Pemberton was judging her by her debt and deciding she couldn't be trusted. Why won't you believe me? She begged. I'm telling the truth. Because people like Preston Blackwood, people with money, with class, with the right appearance, don't steal from jewelry stores, Victoria. Pemberton's voice carried generations of unchallenged assumptions. They don't need to. Your story simply isn't credible. The door chimed a third time. Everyone turned. Jamal Washington stood in the doorway, holding a tablet and a manila envelope. Victoria's breath caught. The man she'd humiliated. The man she'd masked herself against. The man she'd directed to a discount store like he was something to be managed and dismissed. He'd come back. But the look on his face said this wasn't about buying jewelry anymore. Jamal stepped inside with the quiet authority of someone who'd walked into worse rooms than this. Pemberton looked up from his phone, irritation flashing across his aristocratic features. We're closed for a private matter. Please, Mr. Pemberton. Jamal's voice stopped him mid-sentence. My name is Jamal Washington. I'm a detective with the NYPD Major Case Squad, Theft and Fraud Division. I was in your store approximately 40 minutes ago. I believe I can help with your situation. The silence that followed could have shattered diamonds. Victoria grabbed the counter to keep from collapsing. Pemberton's face cycled through confusion, skepticism, and something that might have been shame. You're a police detective? Pemberton's words came out strangled. Jamal pulled out his badge wallet, letting it fall open. Gold Shield. Detective 2nd grade. Shield number 4729. 17 years on the force, 8 in major case. I was shopping during lunch today for my wife's anniversary gift. 15 years married tomorrow. He let that land. The same anniversary milestone Preston Blackwood had claimed. The same reason Jamal had come here in the first place. Victoria made a sound between a laugh and a sob. Detective, I apologize if there was any confusion during your visit, Pemberton began, but Jamal raised one hand. There was no confusion. Your saleswoman made it clear I wasn't welcome. That my appearance didn't meet your standards. That I should shop somewhere more appropriate for people like me. His eyes found Victoria's. She couldn't look away. However, I'm not here about that. I'm here about the theft that just occurred. Pemberton's surprise was genuine. How could you possibly? Because I've been tracking the suspect for 6 weeks. Jamal opened the manila envelope, spreading photographs across the counter. Same man, different disguises, different hair, different glasses, different suits. But always the same refined appearance, always the same trust markers. Preston Blackwood is one of several aliases used by Marcus Henley. Professional jewelry thief, 42 years old, has hit 17 stores across 3 boroughs over 4 months. Total take, $240,000. The photographs told the story Victoria hadn't wanted to see. Every marker of trustworthiness she'd relied on, the suit, the watch, the cologne, the manners, all props in a carefully rehearsed con. Some say she deserved what happened. Others say the system's to blame. What do you think? Drop a comment. We've been surveilling known jewelry districts waiting for him to strike, Jamal continued. When I walked into Sterling and Hartwell and received the treatment I did, I flagged this location as a high-risk target. Your security protocols were weak. Your staff's prejudicial behavior created an exploitable vulnerability. Victoria flinched like she'd been struck. I stayed on the block after leaving. When I saw Henley enter, I recognized him from our case files. I knew exactly what was about to happen. Called for backup. Began documenting. Jamal tapped his tablet, bringing up video footage. Street angle, showing Sterling and Hartwell's entrance. Timestamp, 2:47 p.m. They watched Preston Blackwood exit, walk calmly to a gray Mercedes 2 blocks down, drive away. But Jamal's footage didn't stop there. He'd followed, stayed 3 cars back, documented every turn. I've also pulled traffic camera footage and security from the building next door. Jamal swiped through multiple videos. Complete chain of custody. We can see Henley entering your store, exiting, getting into his vehicle, driving to a storage facility in Queens. The final video showed Marcus Henley entering a storage unit with a small bag. 20 minutes later, he emerged without it. My team is executing a warrant on that facility right now, Jamal said. Based on his pattern, we'll recover your necklace, along with pieces from his other 16 victims. Pemberton stared at the videos, face ashen. You've been tracking him, all this time. All this time. Jamal's voice was quiet, but it filled the room. We were close to an arrest last week, but he went dormant. Today he resurfaced, walked right into a store I'd identified as vulnerable less than an hour earlier. Victoria finally found her voice. You came back. After everything I said. After how I treated you. Jamal looked at her fully. His expression was unreadable, but his words cut deeper than anger ever could. I came back because it's my job, and because I saw what was about to happen. You being arrested for a crime you didn't commit. I couldn't let that happen. Why? The word came out broken. Why would you help me? Because I'm a detective. It's my job to look past appearances and see truth. Each word landed with deliberate weight. I evaluate evidence. I consider patterns. I don't jump to conclusions based on how someone looks or how much money they appear to have. The lesson hung in the air like smoke. Pemberton cleared his throat, trying to salvage dignity. Detective Washington, we deeply appreciate... Mr. Pemberton, Jamal's voice hardened. Let's be clear about what happened here. When I entered your store, I was refused service based on my appearance. Your saleswoman used hand sanitizer after I gestured near a display. She wore a mask when addressing me, but removed it the moment I left. She suggested I shop somewhere more appropriate. Code language we both know the meaning of. Victoria was crying openly now. Then Marcus Henley walked in, Jamal continued. Wore an expensive suit, spoke with polish, so your employee violated every security protocol you claim to have. She removed a $10,000 item without secured payment. Let a complete stranger leave with merchandise based solely on his appearance. He paused, letting the parallel sink in. The same bias that made her reject me as unworthy made her trust a con artist completely. And then you, Mr. Pemberton, did exactly the same thing. You had footage. You had a description. But you chose to believe your employee was lying because you couldn't imagine a well-dressed white man being a criminal. You were ready to have her arrested rather than investigate the obvious truth. Subscribe now, because cases like this happen every day, and you need to know how they end. Pemberton's hands trembled on his walking stick. I apologize. Detective, you're absolutely right. There's no excuse. Your apology isn't what matters. What matters is whether you'll actually change, whether you'll examine why your store was an easy target, why your biases made you vulnerable. Jamal placed a business card on the counter. My sergeant will need your official statement for the case against Henley. We'll need your security footage and cooperation during trial. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Mr. Pemberton? That Cartier Panthère necklace, the one I was told wasn't really available, the one that somehow became immediately available when the right customer inquired. Jamal's voice carried an edge. I'd still like to purchase it. For my wife. Our 15th anniversary is tomorrow. The challenge hung in the air. Pemberton's voice was barely audible. Of course, Detective. It would be our honor. I'll pay full price. No discount. No courtesy reduction. I'll pay exactly what it's worth because I could always afford it. Jamal looked directly at Victoria. That was never the question, was it? Victoria moved like she was underwater, unlocking the case with shaking hands. The necklace, returned from evidence processing later that day, rested on fresh black velvet. She slid it across the counter, unable to meet his eyes. It's beautiful, she whispered. Your wife is very lucky. She is lucky, Jamal agreed. Not because of jewelry, because we've built a life on mutual respect and love. Material things are nice, but they're not what matters. He pulled out his wallet, not from his car, not from some mysterious location, but from his back pocket where it had been all along. He counted out $100 bills, $10,000 in crisp sequential notes, obviously withdrawn that morning for this exact purpose. Victoria processed the sale in silence, wrapping the necklace in tissue paper, placing it in a navy blue Sterling and Hartwell box, sliding it into a silver gift bag with ribbon handles. Thank you for your purchase, Detective Washington. Her voice cracked on his name. I hope your wife treasures it. I'm sure she will. She's an emergency room surgeon at Mount Sinai, saves lives every day, works 70-hour weeks, takes the subway home at midnight still wearing scrubs because she doesn't care what people think of her appearance. His description was deliberate. Another mirror, another lesson. This necklace is for her because she deserves beautiful things, not because she needs them to prove her worth. He picked up the gift bag and headed for the door. At the threshold, he stopped without turning around. Victoria, what you did today was wrong. The way you treated me was discriminatory and hurtful. But I'm still glad I came back to prevent your arrest. Not because you deserved my help, because justice matters more than revenge. He glanced back over his shoulder. I hope you'll remember that. The door chimed as he left. 2 hours later, Jamal's team recovered the Cartier necklace from Marcus Henley's Queens storage unit. Along with it, 16 other pieces totaling $186,000. Henley was arrested at his Brooklyn apartment that evening. 17 counts of grand larceny. Bail set at $500,000. He couldn't make it. The story made local news. Serial jewelry thief caught after 6-week investigation. Jamal declined most interview requests, deflecting credit to his team. Sterling and Hartwell was mentioned by name. The publicity wasn't kind. Within a week, social media erupted. 3 news outlets ran features on implicit bias in luxury retail. Sterling and Hartwell became a case study in how prejudice creates vulnerability. Reviews plummeted. Protesters gathered outside with signs reading, "Prejudice isn't precious," and "Judge character, not clothes." Pemberton called an emergency meeting. Policies were rewritten. Mandatory bias training implemented. A diversity consultant hired at $15,000 per month. A public apology issued, though it rang hollow to most who read it. Victoria kept her job, barely. 2 weeks unpaid suspension. 40 hours of sensitivity training. 6 months probation. Reduced commission structure with the difference donated to racial justice organizations. It felt both justified and devastating. But the real change wasn't structural. It was personal. Victoria started seeing differently. The assumptions she'd made her entire life began crumbling under scrutiny. Every customer became a lesson in withholding judgment. Every interaction became practice in seeing past appearance. It was exhausting, necessary, long overdue. 3 months later, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, the door chimed. Dr. Keisha Washington walked in wearing surgical scrubs decorated with cartoon characters, her hair in a practical ponytail, carrying a Target bag and wearing Crocs with penguins on them. Nothing about her screamed luxury customer. Everything about her radiated quiet competence. Victoria smiled warmly. "Welcome to Sterling and Hartwell. How can I help you today?" "I'm looking for anniversary earrings," Keisha said. "My husband bought me a beautiful necklace from here a few months ago. I'd love matching pieces." Victoria's breath caught. "You're Dr. Washington, Jamal's wife." Keisha smiled. "I am. And you're Victoria." Time seemed to stop. The woman whose husband she'd discriminated against. The woman whose anniversary gift had been at the center of everything. The woman who'd saved lives while Victoria had been judging people by their clothes. "Dr. Washington, I'm so sorry." "He told me what happened," Keisha said gently. "All of it. How you treated him. How he came back anyway. The lesson he tried to teach." Victoria couldn't speak. "I won't pretend it didn't hurt," Keisha continued. "Knowing my husband faces that constantly. Knowing his badge doesn't protect him from being seen as a threat first and a person second. It's exhausting for both of us." "I know. I'm learning." Victoria's voice was thick with emotion. "I'm trying to do better." Keisha studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Jamal said you would be. He said he saw something change in your eyes when he left. Not just shame, but understanding. He was right. He usually is." Keisha's smile softened some of the tension. "So, about those earrings?" Victoria led her to the Cartier display, showed her 2 options, provided honest assessments, offered to have a jeweler verify the pairing. No pressure, just professional service built on respect. Keisha chose the $4,200 pair, tried them on. They sparkled beautifully against her brown skin, complementing the necklace visible beneath her scrubs. As Victoria wrapped the purchase, Keisha said quietly, "He didn't want to come back, you know, after how you treated him." Victoria's hands stilled. "He was hurt, angry. Called me from his car and I could hear it in his voice. Just this deep, tired sadness. Another day, another reminder that his badge doesn't protect him from being judged first." Keisha accepted the gift bag. "But he came back anyway because he saw you were about to be blamed for something you didn't do. And he told me, I can't let an innocent person be punished, even if they treated me badly. That's not who we are." If this story moved you, subscribe, because everyone deserves to be judged by their character, not their appearance. She headed for the door, then paused. "Your second chance matters, Victoria. Every day you get to choose who you'll be. Make it count." The door chimed as she left. Victoria stood alone among millions of dollars of jewelry that suddenly seemed far less valuable than the lesson she'd just received. 6 months later, Sterling and Hartwell launched Brilliance Beyond Appearance, a program partnering with community organizations to offer jewelry design apprenticeships to young people from underserved neighborhoods. 5 scholarships in the first year. 2 apprentices eventually hired full-time. 1 opened her own boutique 3 years later. Pemberton announced the initiative at a press conference, standing beside Jamal, who'd agreed to serve on the advisory board. "We failed," Pemberton said simply. "We allowed prejudice to compromise our integrity. It took nearly destroying an innocent employee and jeopardizing a major criminal case to open our eyes." Jamal stepped to the microphone. "I didn't do this for Sterling and Hartwell. I did it because I believe people can change. Because I believe justice means breaking cycles, not perpetuating them. And because my wife really loves that necklace." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "But what happened here isn't unique," Jamal continued, his voice turning serious. "It's happening every day. People make assumptions based on appearance. Those assumptions create barriers. Those barriers limit opportunity. Everyone suffers." He looked into the cameras. "If you're watching this and you've ever been judged unfairly, you're not alone. If you've ever made assumptions about someone based on how they look, you're not beyond redemption." Change is possible, but it requires honesty, humility, and work. The program launched with a $500,000 endowment. Victoria became program coordinator, less pay than sales, but more meaning than money could measure. She never forgot the lesson. Never forgot the moment her biases nearly destroyed both Jamal and herself. Right now, in stores across America, similar moments are unfolding. Talented people passed over because their names sound foreign. Brilliant minds dismissed because they don't look like leadership. Skilled workers rejected because their clothes came from Target instead of Nordstrom. 64% of consumers report experiencing retail discrimination. 40% of black shoppers are followed or watched more closely than white shoppers. 52% of service workers witness appearance-based bias regularly. The cost isn't just emotional, it's economic. 16 billion lost annually to discrimination lawsuits, lost customers, damaged reputations. But the human cost in dignity and opportunity can't be calculated. Great people exists everywhere, but opportunity is gate-kept by people who confuse appearance with worth. Tomorrow, you'll encounter someone who doesn't fit your expectations. Will you see them or just your assumptions? Comment below. We want to know. Think about a time you were underestimated. How did it feel? Now think about a time you underestimated someone. What did you miss? Share this story if you believe everyone deserves to be judged by their character. Comment with a time you discovered brilliance in an unexpected place. Subscribe for more stories that challenge assumptions and celebrate potential. Because the question isn't whether the best of people exists in unexpected places. The question is whether we're willing to see it, and whether we're brave enough to admit when we've been blind.